I want you to think with me about how many decisions that you made already this morning. When the alarm went off, at whatever time the alarm goes off for you, you had to decide, am I going to press snooze, take another 10, or am I going to get up right then? And then there's breakfast. You had to decide what you were going to eat. And if you chose to eat breakfast cereal, you may have had more than one choice in the pantry. I counted this week, in the Bennett pantry, there are 12 varieties of cereal. Decisions. And that means we had to, if you have cereal at home, you had to decide at the grocery store what kind to buy. And even in a small grocery store, there are over 100 kinds of cereal. And in a large one, well over 200 things to choose from in the cereal aisle. You had to decide what to wear this morning. And for me, that's like a three-parter. You know, it's this shirt, this tie, this jacket, and, well, that kind of determines the socks and the shoes. Decisions. You had to, when you got here, you had to decide where to sit. And some of you made that decision years ago. But others of you decided this morning. 3 weeks from Tuesday, there's an election. Decisions, right? We got to make decisions. How am I going to vote? Am I vote for this person or that person? And then there's all those constitutional amendments. Next month, I'm going to ask you to decide how much money you're going to give to the church in the year ahead. If you have kids, you have beaucoup extra decisions to make. You may have aging parents for whom you are making decisions. It is a complicated world with lots of decisions to be made. The political, social, economic issues, they are complex. Wouldn't it be nice to have a few simple rules to guide us in all the decisions we have to make? Why, yes, it would be, but I do not have those rules for you this morning. What I do have are 3 simple rules, and we're going to spend the morning talking about the first of these 3. Simple rules that will help guide us in our faith lives and could go a long way in the other areas of our life. In the Old Testament, there is a saying, it's a verse that Jewish people, from way back when the Hebrew Bible was written, were told to repeat, to recite every single day. And it's known as the Shema. And you will recognize these words because they're picked up by Jesus in the New Testament as well. Love God with all our heart, mind, soul, and strength. That was the thing. That's the thing the Hebrew people were to repeat every day. And sadly, people took that one simple rule of life and created 613 laws from it. 613 laws. This seems to just be a human habit, isn't it? We take what's simple and we make it complex. Well, Jesus comes and he is asked which of these 613 laws, which ones are the most important. And he boils it down to 2. Love God, which is the Shema, and love your neighbor. Right? These 2. He says all the other ones hang on these 2. Yet somehow the church managed to take those 2 simple rules and make them complex. Well, along comes John Wesley to Great Britain in the 1700s, and as he formed, there was a revival going on of which he was a part in that country, and people were coming to Wesley as he formed them in classes, small groups, for the purposes of growing together, and in Methodist societies. They were asking him this question: what do we need to do to faithfully follow Jesus? There you see the question. What do we need to do to faithfully follow Jesus? And John Wesley gave them 3 simple rules. 3 simple rules that became the general rules of the United Methodist Church. These are rules that if someone really wanted their life to be changed by the power and the grace of God, and if they in turn wanted to change the world follow these 3 rules. Follow these 3 rules. So today we're going to begin a message series on these 3 rules. And here they are. First rule, do no harm. The second rule, do good. And the third rule, stay in love with God. These 3 rules. This morning, rule number 1, do no harm. Say that with me. Do no harm. Do no harm. Our text for this morning is actually 2 brief passages from a letter that Paul wrote to the church at Rome. We know this is Rome. And I'm going to read from chapter 12, beginning with verse 14, and then we'll jump forward to chapter 13. Bless those who persecute you. Bless and do not curse them. Rejoice with those who rejoice. Weep with those who weep. Live in harmony with one another. Do not be haughty, but associate with the lowly. Do not claim to be wiser than you are. Do not repay anyone evil for evil, but take thought for what is noble in the sight of all. If it is possible, so far as it depends on you, live peaceably with all. Beloved, never avenge yourselves, but leave room for the wrath of God. For it is written, vengeance is mine, I will repay, says the Lord. And then jumping forward to chapter 13, verse 8. Owe no one anything except to love one another. For the one who loves another has fulfilled the law. The commandments, you shall not commit adultery, you shall not murder, you shall not steal, you shall not covet, and any other commandment are summed up in this word. Love your neighbor as yourself. Love does no wrong to a neighbor, therefore love is the fulfilling of the law. May the Lord add his blessing to the reading, the hearing of his word, and all God's people said? Amen. 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 Well, in the Romans passage, there's the beginnings of a list of things that we know are wrong, so we do not do these things. We avoid doing things like murdering. We don't murder. We don't steal because we know those things are wrong and they hurt people. We don't lie. We don't cheat. We don't commit adultery because those things are wrong and we know they hurt people. So you might begin to think, well, this is do no harm, easy peasy, right? Piece of cake. Like do no harm, that's easy. I'll just refrain from doing anything that hurts anybody, and I'll just graduate right to rule number 2. Well, not so fast. Not so fast. There are subtle forms of unkindness that we can engage in that cause harm, that do harm to people. Greed is one of those. Greed causes us to do harm. In this way, for greedy, we become stingy, and so we're no longer helping people. Stingy when we ought to be generous. So greed causes us to harm people. Living an undisciplined life. Living an undisciplined life wreaks havoc on relationships. We can't follow through on commitments that we make to people because we're overcommitted. This is one of the features of an undisciplined life. We don't honor other people's time because we're disorganized, we're unprepared. And this frazzles people when we're undisciplined and we're in a relationship with them. It frays the relationship. So it's easier to do harm than we may at first think. Do you stretch yourself to your emotional limits so that others have to contend with your mood swings? Do you use people? Do you use people for your own ambitious goals? Is it all about what others can do for you? I think at the outset, though, because one place people jump to on this rule is say, well, if I'm going to do no harm, then I should never disagree with anyone. Not the case. Not the case. There's a place. In fact, I think you could do more harm sometimes by not disagreeing with people. I mean, if you see somebody heading for a cliff in their life, I think the harmful thing to do is nothing. right? You need to flag them down, wave them off. Like, no, you're going in the wrong way. You're going to say, right? Sometimes we got to say something. And so there's definitely a time and a place to disagree. We would not want to use politeness to avoid confrontation when confrontation is the more loving thing to do. 3 weeks from today, you can pray for me on this. 3 weeks from today, I'm going to preach a message that is talking about human sexuality and the United Methodist Church. Yeah, you thought last week's topic was that. Right, November the 4th. That's going to be the topic because the United Methodist Church, we're going to have a general conference, and I'll talk about this more in 3 months, in February, and we're going to have to talk about, can we disagree on issues relating to sexuality and still be together? And I'm praying the answer to that is yes. But I feel like, you all need to know this is coming closer now. So we're going to talk about that, and we'll talk about not just the church, but the topic itself, which is a hard one. It's one of those hot button issues in the culture today. One of the challenges for us is, I think sometimes we put so much emphasis on tolerance, as though that were a core value of our faith. When really the core value of our faith is holiness. It's holiness. The challenge is, this being set apart by God for the purposes of God's holiness. The challenge in this is, how can we be holy yet not ignore the other characteristics of people who followed Jesus? I think about patience, humility, gentleness, endurance, bearing with one another in love. Because you can't be holy and just cast those other things aside. So it's going to be it's challenging to kind of thread the needle on this. How can we disagree without doing harm to each other? I love this little book. This was published about 10 years ago. It's called 3 Simple Rules. And as I thought about doing this message series, I pulled this book from my library and was again glad that it was written. It was written by a bishop of the United Methodist Church, Reuben Job, who has since died. There's this one paragraph from the chapter on Do No Harm I want to share with you. Each of us knows of groups that are locked in conflict, sometimes over profound issues, and sometimes over issues that are just plain silly. And I hear stories about churches that are involved in the silly things. Like someone once said, it would be easier to add a 4th person to the Trinity than to change the color of the carpet in the sanctuary. All right, so he knows this, the bishop knows this. And sometimes we're locked in conflict over profound issues, sometimes over issues that are just plain silly. But the conflict is real, the division's deep, and the consequences can often be devastating. If, however, all who are involved can agree to do no harm, the climate in which the conflict is going on is immediately changed. How is it changed? Well, if I am to do no harm, I can no longer gossip about the conflict. I can no longer speak disparagingly about those involved in the conflict. I can no longer manipulate the facts of the conflict. I can no longer diminish those who do not agree with me, and must honor each as a child of God. I will guard my lips, my mind, and my heart, so that my language will not disparage, injure, or wound another child of God. I must do no harm, even while I seek a common good. A lot of wisdom in that. We're talking in our worship design team meeting on Tuesday about this service, and I was sharing a little bit about my message. And Michaela Tenney, our youth minister and also minister of discipleship, she sent me this quote, which I had not heard before. I love this. It's by Bob Goff. Don't be right, be Jesus. I love that. I love that. Because so often, we're trying to be right. For us, it means scoring points off other people. Well, I'm right, and you're wrong, and here's why. And, da-da-da-da-da, now, I win. That's not the spirit of Jesus. As you read the New Testament, you can sense the love, sometimes exasperation, but you can sense the love that Jesus had for people. Even people who were going the wrong way. I think about the Pharisees and the Sadducees with all their elitism. Still, he loved them. And he also loved the people to whom they were doing harm. But it was never about me, Jesus. It was always about these other people.